Overwatch, man. The fanfare surrounding this series is just not what it once used to be, especially with how poorly Overwatch 2 was handled. First of all, the justification for the number 2 is just not there. When they shut down 1 and replaced it with 2, they added some new maps, a hero or 2, but, there wasn't really enough of a big leap forward for Overwatch 2 to feel like a proper sequel. It felt more like a major update to 1. And a lot of changes, got mixed reception from fans. The content additions didn't feel meaningful enough. The monetization changes were not well received, while Overwatch 2 is free to play. It doesn't change the fact that the game is just less rewarding because so much stuff is paywalled or behind some kind of battle pass system that's very grindy, and it's just nowhere near the more rewarding system of Overwatch 1, which, yes, did feature loot boxes, but at least the way the reward structure and monetization structure was set up did allow people to get consistent rewards throughout the course of their gameplay experience. And with how much worse that's gone, it's just literally less fulfilling to grind out Overwatch 2. And then more recently, what was going to justify the 2 in Overwatch 2, the PvE stuff, got a significant downgrade. While story missions are still a thing, hero missions were cut completely. It was this mode where there was going to be tons of missions that you could tackle with heroes that were going to be customizable with skill trees and everything that would allow you to change up how the heroes play. With all of that being cut, a lot of people feel disappointed, and it makes the 2 in Overwatch 2 just that much less justified. So the optics surrounding the game currently feel pretty negative, and you can see it in things like the user score here on Metacritic, where it's one of the lowest user scores right now. And not to say that the user score is an accurate representation of a game's merits, but when people en masse decide to downvote a game so much that it gets a score like that, it tends to be indication of some kind of displeasure within the community. And to further highlight the less than ideal state of the IP currently, recently Activision Blizzard hosted a financial briefing where they shared their Q2 2023 earnings report, and the headline here from IGN speaks for itself. Overwatch 2 engagement and player investment is declining, Activision Blizzard admits. The summary of their financial report can be found on investor.activision.com, and here's the portion about Overwatch 2, which reads, while engagement and player investment in Overwatch 2 declined sequentially in the quarter, the Overwatch team is looking forward to the August 10th release of Overwatch 2 Invasion. This will be the largest seasonal update yet, planned to include new PvE story missions, a new game mode, and a new hero progression system, as well as an additional hero. So Activision Blizzard has gone on to admit that not only are players spending less time with the game, but also players are spending less in Overwatch 2. They haven't shared exact figures, and they're probably not too keen on doing so, but generally, there is a decline in how much players are playing and how much they're spending, and that's just obviously not a good sign for what is supposed to be a long-term live service. Now, whether the new seasonal update will be substantial enough for people to feel the spark of playing Overwatch 2 again, especially with story missions being introduced and whatnot, and whether the new game mode will be fun and compelling enough to bring a lot of people back, all of that remains to be seen. I know that the story missions, last time I reported on these, they're not going to be very long, just a couple hours. Their estimates right now, based on Game Informer's report, that a story mission ran about 30 minutes, not including cutscenes, that 3 story missions that will be included as part of this season will likely take about 2 hours to beat. And that's, you have to pay $15 for that. So it's not a chunky amount of content. People interested in the PvE stuff, it feels like they're going to tune in for a couple hours and then drop the game again, unless the new game mode really compels people enough that it'll have players stay for the long term and it'll drive up engagement and spending. As for the general discourse online surrounding this, well, not a whole lot of people are surprised that there is a decline in player engagement and spending. You got tweets like these: who would have thought after canceling 80% of the promised game, people would lose interest in Overwatch 2? This gained quite a bit of traction. Here's another somewhat viral tweet with over 12,000 likes and almost 1 million views. Remember, Blizzard made the best multiplayer FPS game of all time and then abandoned it to make a co-op PvE game they would eventually cancel? Overwatch, the 2016 smash hit and insanely popular multiplayer game, was chosen to not be their focus. A lot of people reminiscing the Overwatch 1 days when it felt like this was just going to be a runaway hit that would continue to thrive for the long term, only to see it in the state that it is, which just feels like a shadow of what it once used to be. Now it's heavily monetized husk that consistently disappoints its players. No one is shocked about the declining numbers, so on and so forth. Now, one of the ways that Activision Blizzard seems to hope to maybe bring in more players is by releasing Overwatch 2 on Steam. Blizzard games tend to be hosted on Activision Blizzard's own launcher, Battle.net, but that's all about to change with Overwatch 2 coming to Steam on August 10th in just a few weeks. The page for it is already up and running, and I'm curious to see what the user reviews will look like, but you can see right here an August 10th release date. And Blizzard explains all of this in this blog post, where they also shared that it's not necessarily just Overwatch 2 that's coming to Steam. Over time, more Blizzard games may roll out on the popular PC launcher and storefront. The timing of all of this feels interesting, just as Activision Blizzard announced that there's been a decline in player engagement and investment. They decide to release this game on a more popular launcher and platform. It's also worth noting that this is happening around the time when Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard made significant headway when the FTC lost its court case against the acquisition. Regardless of what the thought process was behind bringing Overwatch 2 to Steam all of a sudden, I'd say that the more accessible a game is, the better. But also the game itself has to be in a good place to leverage the additional platforms that it releases on. People have to feel excited for the franchise, and currently it just feels like the franchise is at a low point. The optics surrounding its monetization, its changes, its lack of substantial additions to justify the 2 in Overwatch 2, and then the cutting of hero missions, it just feels like there's so much going against Overwatch 2, so many decisions that killed the hype and the upwards trend of Overwatch as an IP. And then to make matters worse, the state of Overwatch esports is abysmal right now. It seems as though the days of the Overwatch League are numbered. Here is something else that Activision Blizzard disclosed during their recent financial briefing. Our collaborative arrangements for our professional esports leagues continue to face headwinds, as previously disclosed. During the second quarter, we amended certain terms of our collaborative arrangements with team entities participating in the Overwatch League. According to the amended terms, following the conclusion of the current Overwatch League season, the teams will vote on an updated operating agreement. If the teams do not vote to continue under an updated operating agreement, a termination fee of $6 million will be payable to each participating team entity, total fee of approximately $114 million. As of June 30th, 2023, a termination liability has not been accrued. Total revenues from the Overwatch League comprise less than 1% of our consolidated net revenues. What Activision Blizzard is saying here is that the current state of Overwatch esports and esports in general is pretty rough right now, and esports just does not make a whole lot of money for Activision Blizzard, and so they're giving Overwatch League teams an out if they decide to discontinue the Overwatch League. If the votes go that way, then all teams will receive a termination fee of $6 million to essentially give them a bit of a parachute. And then further indication that Overwatch esports and esports in general is in trouble is the fact that Activision Blizzard seems to be moving away from esports in general, as indicated by layoffs surrounding esports staff at Activision Blizzard. As The Verge highlights in their article, the fate of the Overwatch League after the current season is now in the hands of team owners to be voted on sometime later this year. And the speculation out there right now is that it's highly unlikely that the teams will vote to continue things, given disruptions like the COVID-19 pandemic and the financial stress that caused, given what happened in China, where Blizzard games, including Overwatch and Hearthstone, were taken offline in the country because Blizzard and its longtime Chinese publishing partner NetEase failed to negotiate a new licensing agreement. Given all of this and the general cooling on esports overall, it's a safe assumption that the franchise owners will probably choose not to continue on with the league, take the $6 million payout, and summarily end the franchise era of Overwatch esports. Overwatch is not just any live service, it is primarily a competitive PvP hero shooter, And when its esports scene is in shambles like this, that doesn't help with the current state of the game and the decline of its optics, its player engagement, and its player investment. Now, Activision Blizzard continues to insist that they're not planning to abandon Overwatch Esports. Overwatch League Commissioner Sean Miller affirmed Blizzard's commitment to Overwatch Esports, stating Overwatch remains committed to a competitive ecosystem in 2024 and beyond. We're building toward a revitalized global scene that prioritizes players and fans. He further added that, I'm actually very optimistic about the future of Overwatch Esports and the competitive ecosystem. We're doing all we can to make the player experience and the fan experience one that people want to return to, want to be a part of, and get excited about to turn on. But there's a very real possibility that that optimism is fake and does not match the reality of the current situation, especially when you consider that the company's esports department suffered layoffs impacting around 50 employees, which, according to one of those affected, seems like a significant gutting of Activision Blizzard Esports. The Verge spoke to a number of former employees who were laid off, and all of them are saying the same thing. Nothing about the gutting of the esports department of Activision Blizzard speaks to a company that's truly fully committed to esports for the long term. Former employees were also not pleased by the lack of communication surrounding layoffs, which came out of nowhere, despite Brad Crawford, Senior Director of Global Communications of Activision Blizzard Esports, insisting that supporting our employees through transition is our top priority. A lot of former employees report that they don't feel supported. There was no warning. This was a complete shock to everyone, and none of us who were laid off were offered any opportunity to switch roles or teams. And the fact that these layoffs happened around a time when Activision Blizzard was working to overhaul tools used to run its tournaments, with the new tools not being complete before the layoffs happened and the new tools essentially no longer being in development, that's further indication that Activision Blizzard's interest in esports is waning because the scene is just not doing well. A former employee said that our replacement tool wasn't finished, so I can only speculate that Activision Blizzard is closing its esports division. In my eyes, they're completely unequipped to internally support anything esports after that, after the recent round of layoffs and after the halting of the development of these new tournament tools. So yeah, all this optimism coming from Activision Blizzard higher-ups about how they're committed to the long-term future of Overwatch esports, all of that contrasts and contradicts heavily with the grim picture painted by the now former employees. There was already indication over 2 months ago that Activision was waning on their commitment to esports. This is an article from May 5th, 2023, where PC Gamer reported that Activision isn't sure how long the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League will last, says efforts to address challenges surrounding esports may prove unsuccessful. One of the quotes from this SEC filing is that esports leagues continue to face headwinds which are negatively impacting the operation and potentially the longevity of the leagues under the current business model. We continue to work to address these challenges, which could result in significant costs, and such efforts may prove unsuccessful. This is on top of what was reported last month on June of 2023. A streamer invested a good chunk of money into esports with little to no return. And this streamer made a video warning people to not get into the esports business because everyone is losing a lot of money. Scrolling down, we have some choice quotes such as, if you look at any esports organization in North America, all of them are either broke or going broke. And I do mean all of them. Some organizations will try and put on a front and say, hey, we're still good, we look good, everything's cool here. Trust me when I say everyone is losing a lot of money. A lot of people are being fired. No organization is safe right now, which further reinforces the notion that Activision Blizzard's optimism surrounding the future of esports, it feels really fake compared to the grim realities of esports right now. Brands are scared of esports because they invested millions and millions into it and they never got any significant return. Activision Blizzard itself admitted that the total revenues from the Overwatch League comprised less than 1% of our consolidated net revenues. It's just not a worthwhile financial investment for the company. Even since late last year, there was a general sense of foreboding surrounding esports, with this article from VentureBeat reporting that the esports winter is coming. Scrolling further down, it is explained that with COVID pandemic concerns winding down, live streaming views are falling from their pandemic era highs. At the same time, advertising budgets are being slashed in anticipation of a recession. This means less money coming in across the board for ad-supported businesses like esports organizations. So the Overwatch League and the Overwatch esports scene crashing right now is not just a result of Overwatch as an IP just being in a less than ideal state. It's also just the general state of esports alongside just the general economic state that we're currently in. But it certainly doesn't help that the Overwatch IP optics are at seemingly an all-time low. When an IP like Overwatch 2 is trending downwards, both on the non-esports side of things when it comes to player investment and engagement, and on the esports side of things due to a number of factors, alongside Overwatch having killed the hype for the IP so much because of the way that Blizzard and the Overwatch series has tripped over itself constantly. None of this gives confidence that Overwatch has a bright long-term future unless Blizzard makes some drastic changes in the way they approach the development of Overwatch, or unless some kind of content or feature addition feels so substantial and like such a game changer, and finally something that justifies the 2 in Overwatch 2, that it'll spark some kind of fire that hopefully will be nurtured so that Overwatch can have a bright long-term future, because I don't want to see the potential of Overwatch squandered, but a lot of people would argue that that's exactly what's happening right now. Overwatch just deserves to be in a better state than it currently is in, because so many people do love it. Like, I enjoyed Overwatch once upon a time, and I've fallen out of it, but I want reasons to come back to it because I enjoy the setting, I enjoy the heroes, I enjoy the gameplay, but you know, if the game is finding ways to be unrewarding through its monetization systems, just poorly marketing features, or just being overly ambitious with things to a point where they have to cut the thing that so many people were looking forward to for the so-called sequel, the hero missions, when Overwatch 2 and the series as a whole just keeps mishandling its execution, you know, it's hard to stay excited for Overwatch. It's hard to not just move on to greener pastures, and I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing. We'll see if Overwatch can make some kind of major comeback or recovery with this upcoming season and future content. It is still a major IP. There's still plenty of people who tune in and play the game, but the declining trend is certainly not encouraging, and only time will tell, and Blizzard's efforts will tell what the future holds for this now troubled series. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Overwatch 2 and the Overwatch IP. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.